Dick, can you hear me back there? Yes. Okay, good, thank you. Looks like you.
Yeah.
They sure do. And you want to. You want to. Good morning, and welcome to the 2021 Kennebunkport Town Meeting. My name is George Emmer. On Tuesday last, just before the election started, I was elected moderator for this town meeting, which this is a continuation of. Louder? Okay, a little louder. My voice was only this strong. As I said, I was elected moderator on Tuesday. This is a continuation of the town meeting, the voting being the first part of it, the first day of it. So I will continue being the moderator for the day, and as soon as this meeting is over, I'm done being a moderator. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to serve the town in this manner. I am looking forward to a civil but efficient meeting and plenty of action on the next 13 of our 14 articles, the first one being taken care of by the ballot. First, a couple of things about Tuesday's voting. Congratulations to both Alan Daggett and Michael Weston, who were re-elected for another 3-year term as selectmen. Congratulations to Megan Michaud, elected to the school board, to Jim Burrows, re-elected as trustee of the Kennebunkport Wells Water District, and to John Dykstra, elected to the Beach Advisory Committee. Questions 1 through 4 all passed. Out of 3,201 registered voters when we started voting, we had about 10 or 12 new folks registered for voting on that day. We had 1,218 voters on Tuesday, about a 38% turnout. Okay, now for housekeeping. You all have voter cards? Please use them and hold them up high enough so that I can tell. How you voted, how you voted. Let's see, there are 2 motions that I need to make from the floor before we start. The first is to adopt the Maine Moderators Manual, which is a 2005 edition, but that is the current edition. It is the adopted manual for how Maine runs town meetings. So I'd like a motion to adopt the Maine Moderators Rules. Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion is carried. We use the Maine Moderator Rules. Okay, the second is a motion to allow non-registered voters to speak. And we must do that if we're going to hear from Laurie Smith, you know. This requires a 2/3 majority. It's a standard thing that's done almost every town meeting in Maine. So I need a motion to allow non-registered voters to speak.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. You may speak when you wish to, Laurie. For those who want to participate in discussions, please speak up so we can hear you. It's obviously tough enough for you to hear me in some cases. We'll provide a microphone to you if necessary. If you have a good loud voice, that's even better. When you do decide to participate, please identify yourself, be brief, avoid personal challenges to people, address me with your questions. I will move those questions wherever they're appropriate to go. And if you intend to propose an amendment to one of these articles, bring me the written amendment before you get up in front of your mic or in front of the folks. Time to get started. So it's warrant article number 2. This is a 5-section article. You've seen them before. It reads, to see if the town will vote to approve the following. Paragraph A. To authorize the town treasurer, with the advice and approval of the municipal officers on behalf of the town, to sell and dispose of real estate acquired by the town for non-payment of taxes thereon, and to execute quitclaim deeds on such terms as they deem advisable, and to authorize the treasurer to discharge unmatured liens on payment of taxes, interest, and costs. B, to authorize the town treasurer, with the advice and approval of the municipal officers on behalf of the town, to waive the foreclosure of any tax lien mortgage by recording a waiver of foreclosure in the York County Registry of Deeds for any real estate title to which they deem not in the best financial interest of the town to hold. Said authorization to waive not to prevent the town treasurer, with the advice and approval of the municipal officers, from later foreclosing on said tax lien pursuant to law as they deem advisable. C, to make all real and personal property taxes due and payable upon presentment of bills to charge 5% per annum on the first half if unpaid after September 10th of this year, 2021, or 45 days after the day of commitment, if commitment was after July 28th, 2021. And on the second half, if unpaid after March 10th, 2022. D, set the interest rate to be paid by the town on abated taxes at 4% for fiscal year 2022. And finally, E, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to enter into a standard agreement with taxpayers establishing a quote tax club unquote payment plan for commercial and or residential real estate property taxes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 2 as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Article 2 carries as written. Article 3, this is a three-part article. To see if the town will vote to approve the following: to pay for tax abatements and applicable interest granted during the fiscal year 2021-2022 from overlay. B, to authorize the selectmen to apply for, accept, and expend from the following categories of funds as provided by the state of Maine. Those funds are the municipal revenue sharing, educational certification block grant, educational tax relief grant, public library state aids, urban rural road initiative program, civil emergency funds, snowmobile registration funds, tree growth reimbursement, general assistance reimbursement, veterans exemption reimbursement, Department of Economic and Community Development Grant Program, Maine Emergency Management Agency, the homestead exemption reimbursement, and all other state and federal grants and funds, including when necessary, the authority to sign grant contracts, documents, or other paperwork. And C, see if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to carry forward unencumbered surplus fund balances on June 30th, 2021, for the purposes originally appropriated and to the extent they deem advisable, such determination to be made at a properly noticed meeting of the Board of Selectors.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 3 as written.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Article 3 carries as written. Must be dry in here. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to approve the following: to authorize a tax collector or treasurer to accept prepayments of taxes not yet committed pursuant to 36 MRSA, that's Maine Revised Statutes annotated, section 506. B, to authorize the selectmen to accept easement deeds on behalf of the town, granting the town the right to plant and maintain certain trees on private property located within the town. And C, to authorize the selectmen to accept unconditional and conditional gifts of money or property on behalf of the town, other than gifts of sewer extensions, subject to ratification by the town at the annual or special town meeting held within 1 year of the selectmen's acceptance, except that such ratification shall not be required for a donation of money to the town to supplement a specific appropriation already made, to reduce the tax assessment, or to reduce the permanent debt.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 4 as written.
Second. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Article 4 carries as written. Article 5, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for general government program expenses. The amount requested is $2,078,769. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 5 as written.
Second. Would you like to make an amendment? Please stand up and give me your name. Thank you.
My name is Robin Phillips, Kennebunkport. I would like to make a motion to amend Article 5 to eliminate group planner enforcer salary of $119,000 and $50,000 annual for expert software and consultant.
Let's see. We have a motion and a second that the town raise and appropriate $2 million for general government expenses. Would you like to take that question for?
It's in Article 5. I didn't want to miss my chance. I don't really know about these things.
So we've got a motion in the second, right?
Yes.
On the article.
Yes.
So now you have an amendment. So you go, you say louder on what the amendment is to reduce the amount requested.
We'd like to have you bring that up too, so I can see it, please. I think the problem is we're just proceeding incorrectly. We've got amendment and a second. A motion and a second.
Now. What is the
Expert and professional
So
software.
you would like to reduce it by 100%. So she wants to reduce the 2,078,000. So she wants to reduce, sorry about that. She wants to reduce the 2,078,000. She wants a minor, please.
$78,769.
By $169,000. So that would, I'm asking Jen, our treasurer, to check my math here. So that would be 1,909,000. 1,909,769. So Robin wants to amend to make the authorization for the appropriation 1,909,769. So now we'd be looking for a second for that amendment.
No, you want to take one question at a time.
We do, but we first need a second to that amendment.
Yes.
before it can go further.
All those in favor? Oh, discussion.
So Dan, you're seconded.
Okay. So now we want to hear discussion.
So usually we ask the person making the amendment.
To explain herself?
Yep.
Okay, Robin.
Okay. I realize that short-term rental was passed, but by less than 200 votes, pretty much without public discussion, pretty much by the Board of Selectmen. I don't think the town asked them to do this. I don't know how much any of you know about the surveillance that will be done with this ordinance, but they will be able to look at text messages, any kind of social media, Airbnb. They're going to hire someone for $119,000, that's benefits per year, to enforce this. They are going to spend $50,000 per year for a consultant software surveillance company or compliance company. They are going to limit areas of town. So like, there's certain residents of this town that don't want short-term rentals in their neighborhood, but that's not really our problem. I live in East Rocks. I do not rent, don't plan on it, but we put up with each other because that's what we do. The other thing I would like to say is this planning and development. When I spoke with people of this town, that was one of their larger complaints, is that they don't agree with the planning and development happening in our town. So I did the numbers right now per person. We're paying $135 for planning and development each, every woman, man, woman, and child. If this goes through, it will add another $52.72 to the planning department, and that's a 39% increase. Their argument is that fees will pay for this, but the fees for 1 to 3 bedroom will be $250, and the fee for 4 plus is 500, and they figure there's about 250, that's what I got from Werner in this town. That does not cover it. If say 50 were 4-bedroom and over, and 200 were, you know, three bedroom, it still does not cover that. But I really feel like we were railroaded by the selectmen to do this. And I think because of COVID, we deserve a chance for input, and the state also has legislation that may ban towns from banning short-term rentals. So to spend $169,000 before we even know if that goes through seems a little, you know, wasteful. So
Okay.
that's what I have to say. I think anybody else?
Is there any other discussion? Yes, sir.
The amendment is a backdoor way of defeating what the voters already approved. So two of us here are going to rescind what was approved by the electorate of the town. And that's not the right way to legislate.
Special town meeting did that for the Philly parcel.
Is there any other discussion? Yes, sir.
I have a question. I heard the original amendment was to eliminate line items. I don't know if we're voting to eliminate a line item, or are we just taking an amount out of the budget where the board, I think, still has the authority to move money of the budget across different line items. That may be mistaken. So is this eliminating a line item that the presenter of the amendment has an issue with? Or is it simply lowering the total amount and anything can be funded as long as it was approved?
Understood, sir. Yes.
I'd like to, on my question, Selectman. In 2018, I wasn't here in 2018, but there was a group that was formed to discuss the short-term rentals. And they did a survey of about 300 people. And the survey came back, 48% were in favor of the short-term rentals, and 52% were against short-term rentals. But it was a survey of only a small portion of the town. So when we started to take a look at short-term rentals and what was happening in our town, we decided that we would put together our own little task force. And then what we did was publicize everything that we were doing, everything. And we ended up having, I don't remember how many Zoom meetings we had with the public. I have spent hours on the phone with people who have called against the short-term rental and people who are for the short-term rental, and answered every question I could. Now, sometimes they didn't like the answers, that's for sure, but that's the way it works. Some are for it, some are against it. So after many, many meetings and meetings with attorneys and we had something like 150 to 160 emails from concerned citizens of the town. I read them all. Lori read them all. I think most of us read them all. And a lot of those recommendations that were made by people that were for and against the short-term rentals were incorporated into the final ordinance. Every one of them. Now, are people in agreement about it? No. So we decided that the best thing to do, and all of this was done in the public. There was nothing, as it's been alleged, been done behind closed doors, nothing. We did it all in public. And we've been over back. We even did our discussions that we were having on the short-term rental. I asked to make sure that they were publicized, and we did Zoom meetings on those. This was not to have public input at those meetings, but it was to let everybody know what we were thinking, what we were doing, and so forth. So anybody who says that we didn't do this in public is not telling you the truth. We did it in public. So now we had our own survey on Tuesday. 1,218 people showed up. 53% of, almost 53% of the people voted for it. 47% voted against it. It's around it was around 5-something% margin. And every one of the ordinances that the selectmen proposed for voting on passed by very comfortable margins. Whether it was the dog ordinance, whether it was the short-term rental, which is what the topic is right here, is irrelevant. They all passed by a substantial margin. So we did our own survey last Tuesday, and that's what the results were. So then we come to the planning department, trying to take away money from the planning department. You know, the planning department has 2.5 people. We have Werner Gilliam, Andrew Welch, and Greg Reed, who's part-time. And we have Lisa, who is the one that makes everything work in the office. That's all we have in this town. And last year, we had 26 new homes built, which means this staff, in addition to dealing with all the COVID things with the restaurants and everything else, had to be out in the field doing all of the things that have to be approved by code, every one of them at the stages. So 2.5 people doing all that work. So when we took a look at what was happening there, we said, well, look, we really need to add a whole person for helping out there, because, you know, take Werner in the group. We have a planning board. The planning board is totally volunteers. A very small budget for administrative costs and so forth, but totally volunteers. We have the growth planning committee, which is in planning, and all of those are volunteers. And the growth planning committee is charged with developing the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan is something that the state makes us do. So all of that is within the planning department. Werner goes to meetings at night. He goes to other places. We're dealing with rising oceans. We're dealing with the new rules that are coming out for where you can be as far as near the water and everything. So he's doing all of this stuff, and we're doing it with 2.5 people. We thought that the best thing that we could do was to, instead of just saying, well, we're going to have this person for adding to the planning board, to the planning department, we would end up being able to use part of this for implementing the new short-term rentals if it passed, which it did by over 5%. So that's where that came from. We would use that and use that person to help implement this. As far as the software goes, you know, it's not like we did this in a vacuum. We went to any number, 10, 15 towns, that some who already have their short-term rentals in some form, and how are they dealing with the administrative tasks for it. And overwhelmingly, they all said, not all of them. There were some that were doing some spreadsheets and they're in trouble. So we elected to spend some money to do it right. And when we looked at the whole, about $50,000 for software package. There's no question about it. That's exactly what it is. So the numbers that the young lady had here were correct. It's 169,000 in total. But we believe that most of that will be recovered through the short-term rental fees. And it may not be everything in the first year, and it may not, but it might be in the second year. But in the meantime, we've got somebody that can handle the 30 or so, 25 to 30 new housing that we have every year. The 580 to 600 permits that our code enforcement office issues every single year. Every single year. That means plumbing permits. That means electrical permits. That means addition. If you're going to put an addition on house permits, that means the whole. I mean, everything that happens in this town. Now, some people may not like what gets approved and so forth, but everything that we do, try to do, is by ordinance. And so now there's some gray areas in the ordinances and so forth, but we try to do everything the planning department does, and the planning board especially tries to do everything according to the ordinances in the subdivision regulations. So I think to malign the planning department for something that they need and trying to overturn, but the voters, nobody railroaded anybody. I don't know where that term came from, but we were out and about, and we were transparent as we could be. We had sometimes, I think we had up 80 people on Zoom meetings. I don't remember what the highest number was, but these are a lot of people who were followers. So it's all done about. So I just wanted to give you perspective why the budget board voted unanimously for this, and why the selectmen voted unanimously for this is exactly this. We know what it needs to be, we think we know what needs to be done in town, and we try to follow what our instincts are to do a good job to manage the town. And the planning department is one. We have one of the best planning departments that I've ever been associated with. So I just think that this is a misdirected amendment. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Yes, sir.
I understand what Mr. West is saying about the $169,000. What I don't understand is we're putting in $115,000 for salary for this planning person, and he's going to be doing all kinds of things. I'd like to see a job description for this. What's he gonna be
Including
doing
benefits,
this time?
including benefits.
Excuse me?
That includes benefits.
Of course. 19 of benefits. And so, to me, just adding this to the town budget is unnecessary. And I think we're just going the wrong direction for the town when we start throwing money like this without any real job description of what they're going to be doing or anything else. If one of us, and they need help, hire somebody who can do it. And it won't cost $169,000. Thank you.
Are you volunteering?
Is there any other discussion? Yes, sir.
Hi, Paul Dugan. I do commend the Board of Selectmen for all the work they put into the short-term rental ordinance. The first one that came out was not well thought out, I would say, and it improved and improved and improved over the months. But it still has a couple of big problems, which is why I think half the town almost voted against it the other day. And this is as much part of the democracy as backwards. So there's no rule that you can't vote differently today than a vote the other day. The two big problems I see is that while many of those 80 people on the calls asked the town define what the cap would be on short-term rentals, the town wouldn't do that. They said it's going to be based upon a formula. So the town could say 2 years from now, we have 2,800 dwellings, so it's 1% or it's 5%. Even if 400 people try to register and did get registered, there would be nothing to stop the Board of Selectmen if they felt it was necessary to say it's a half of 1% or 1% or 2%. And so that should have been spelled out and could have been spelled out. And there could have been a robust public discussion about that, and then it could have been settled. And so that didn't happen. Secondly, people who have, when they go to sell their house, when the cap goes in, the ability to rent in the future is lost. So the result is going to be, I think, very unfortunate for the town, because only people who are richer and richer are going to be able to buy in this town. In the past, many of us, many in this room, who came from away, were only able to buy here because we could, spent years using it part-time and renting it part-time to pay our taxes, to pay the expenses, to pay all the people in town who take care of these houses. And the result will be that that's no longer an entry into this town, except at Goose Rocks. The rest of the town, if you can't afford the full freight and the high prices, you just can't buy here. And so the children and relatives of people who live here, who don't have a lot of means, are not going to be able to move here. Thank you.
Is there any, yes, ma'am.
Could we get clarification on Mr. Dykstra's question about specifying where the money is coming from? I know with the school board, you can't reduce by line item, that you can only ask for a reduction and then the determination is made.
Would you like to address that?
Yes, the town meeting votes on the total amount, and once the total amount is set, the selectmen do have authority to move money within that account, but usually the selectmen also hear from the community, and there's only so much leeway because these budgets don't have a lot of leeway in them.
Yes, sir.
Richard Driver, Goose Rocks, a question. The ordinance amendment passed. So, as I understand it, it's now law in Kennebunkport. The amendment would attempt to defund the amendment to the ordinance that's passed. Will the selectmen move money to enforce the ordinance that the majority of the voters recommended and approved? In other words, if this amendment passes, will there still be money to enforce the rental law?
That's a good question. I would say in some fashion, yes. You know, the voters, stand up. The voters spoke clearly on Tuesday. And, you know, I know some of you in this room don't agree with what they said, and that's okay. And certainly it's been to the benefit of the town because I haven't seen this many people at town meeting in years. So I commend everybody for coming out today. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm speaking for myself here, not for the 4 other members of this board, but yes, I'm committed to funding this. And as far as what Paul Hogan said, I have a different take on people and the values of homes. You know, my daughter said to me one day, I'd love to live in this town, but I can't afford to. And you look around and people buy these homes with no intention of living here, and they rent them out to subsidize their ownership. How, I mean, we have 2 completely different opinions on this, but perhaps somewhere in the middle is the true answer to that. And regulating short-term rentals is in no way, shape, or form saying that people can't do it. Now, we will know what's going on, and we require them to do some things. And to say that they're surveilling them, I mean, I've heard some crazy things in COVID. You know, somebody told me Bill Gates was going to put a microchip in my arm when I got my vaccine. But yes, we will have some requirements. But to any of you who own one of these, and I'm sure that's most of you in this room, I think we're all pretty well surveilled right now. So I hope that you will vote with me and defeat this amendment, and that we can move on to that. I mean, certainly, I don't wish to cut off anybody who wishes to speak. That is your right today. But I'm ready to move on and hear what the voters in this room have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to have a say. Am I good? I want to talk to Paul Hogan. What's that?
Microphone. I'm coming up.
I'd like to answer Paul Hogan's question, why we did not put a cap. The reason why we didn't put a cap is because we weren't sure how many people would like and want to sign up for a short-term rental license. We didn't know whether it was gonna be 400, 500, or whatever. And we also wanted to make sure that those people that were doing it now would be able to do it then, without a cap. And then that's the reason why we didn't put a cap. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mike is coming your way.
I'm Gerald Fitzgerald from Gooserock, and my question is, the original information about the annual.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. Really hard to hear you. Yes, thank you.
The original information that was presented at one of the meetings specified that the $50,000 cost for the software package was an annual expense. And the issue of if somebody has a different clarification of that, I'd like to understand that. But to me, I understand that the voters approved this. What I'm questioning is, we don't surveil any other license that we grant from this town, with perhaps the exception of what we do when we go out and when Werner and his crew go out and look at what permits were issued and what was done in new construction. But the idea that somebody's going to be that we're paying $50,000 a year to surveil whether people are complying with filing a license request seems inordinate to me. And so I'd like some clarification as to what that ongoing software cost is. If it's one thing upfront and less later on, that's one issue. It's $50,000 a year. To me, that seems ridiculous for 200 some licenses. How many dog licenses do we manage to issue without? We don't monitor whether people are picking up their dog poop, and we don't monitor whether their dogs are trained and are at risk of biting somebody in the community or jumping up on somebody.
That's
So-
a state law, not a local ordinance.
Okay, but we issue the license here in town. So my question is, can anybody dispute that it's $50,000 a year? Or is it $40,000 up front and $10,000 a year? Do we know the answer to that?
Can we have an answer to that, please? Werner?
Never thought it'd be so popular at the time. So, so I'm happy to, provide some clarifying information regarding the software. So, sure, yeah, Werner Gilliam, I'm the Director of Planning and Development for you all. I live in Kennebunk.
Can you hear him all right?
So regarding the software, so back when we were, going through the process and developing, initial estimates, looking at options, things of that nature, in order to develop a budget estimation, for this particular software, we have to look at how many units do we think that we would be looking at? How many units do we think could potentially need to be registered? And so looking at that number, we've been tracking numbers, and this is all essentially publicly available information. If you put your house on Airbnb or VRBO, you're already putting that information out there. And so this is, so when folks talk about surveilled information, it's all information that you as a short-term renter are willingly and knowingly putting out there to begin with. But what we looked at is we had to come up with some numbers of saying, all right, how many short-term rentals do we think we have in town? And so looking at some of those numbers, I would tell you that, in town, if you look at just your, the major websites, there's probably over the course of the past couple of years, the numbers have fluctuated from anywhere from, say 250 to 350. Based on, who has themselves registered. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be primarily those that are registered through those major websites or Airbnb, VRBO, things like that. Doesn't necessarily include those that are, that may be registered just on local websites. So we estimate there's probably at least another 100 or so that are there. So when we come up with an estimation, we say, okay, all right. That tells us that we have maybe potentially 400, 450 that could be, that could be active in town. And then the question is, once this ordinance goes into effect, how many other folks do we think might also then choose to apply for a license at that point? So, again, as we're trying to make an informed decision, I'm going to estimate, all right, there's a potential there could be 500 that show up looking to register. Now, the software that we're looking at on an annual, for an annual fee for that, is roughly somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 a unit, to have through this site. So that number, I can tell you that, so hence the $50,000 number for the licensing, because it's based on number of units. Now, that number could fluctuate. If we have 250, now it's 25,000 because we're paying based on the number of units that we have. That dollar amount that shows up is, it's an accounting number, that's put in because it's offset by revenue. So the town is only paying the software company based on the number of units that are registered and come through this system. We have 300, it's 30,000. So it's not a 50,000 flat fee every year regardless. It's going to be based on the number of units that are offset then by the licensing fee. I hope I didn't confuse anyone with that.
May I ask Warner a question?
Yes, you may.
Yeah.
I'm Dan Beard. Warner, usually they can hear me. Is there a penalty for someone who rents but doesn't register, in the sense of, I want to rent my place for 2 weeks, I go out and find somebody, rent it for 2 weeks, and don't register with you? I do that another year type of thing. Do I get fined for not registering?
So the way that the ordinance is set up, it's an enforcement mechanism. And then if we have folks that don't follow with that ordinance, under the way the ordinance is written, that gets brought to the Board of Selectmen.
Is there a fine?
There's not a specified fine that is written in the ordinance. Okay, that the enforcement actions are, so if our department determines that there's enforcement action, that information is then taken and brought forward to the Board of Selectmen.
So why would anybody register?
Well, what will happen, for those folks that don't register, just as a matter of practicality, those folks are noticed, you're in violation of the ordinance, that's brought to the Board of Selectmen. Board of
They
Selectmen,
wouldn't get a license if they wanted to go, because they would have to be approved. And they would be found in violation, just as you'd be found in violation of faulty septic system or anything else, correct, Warner?
so the mechanism within the ordinance is to bring that to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen are the ones that are authorized to determine, any fine, that can be levied. So I only have authority within the ordinance as is specified. And so, a good example is after the fact building permit, correct? So that's done on a double permit basis, or there are other mechanisms that are, that are permitted that say, here's what you have the authority to do. This particular ordinance, it spells it out. If I have enforcement issues, those are brought to the Board of Selectmen.
Yes, sir.
Curiosity question. It's a little selfish, but I'm just curious of the short-term rentals. If there's 400 to 500, how many more? What percentage of that happens at Goose Rocks Beach? Could you talk about this?
Now you're gonna have me guess on that one now. If I'm gonna give an estimate on that, I'm gonna say that, likely that's maybe between, 50 to 70% of that, I'd say is probably primarily focused at Goose Rocks.
That was percentage you said?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, there are a number of different maps that you can look at that will show you that, and, no surprise to anybody that it's primarily concentrated along the coast.
Yes, sir.
Wayne Burbank, I live down in Goose Rocks, and if I hadn't been able to rent our place when we bought it 20 years ago, we wouldn't be there. So I don't know what brought up all this stuff about short-term rentals. I mean, I know a lot of people that rent down there, and we've rented there, and I've never heard of a complaint by a neighbor. I mean, once in a while, 9 and 10 o'clock at night, you'll get a rowdy crowd that's in there. That's for one night or a couple of nights. And I don't understand, why you can, if you sell your property, the next person can't rent it. That doesn't make sense to me. But, I don't know how this all came about. I mean, we've got laws that if people are rowdy and they're causing problems, and you got, one of the big things that I heard, they're leaving rubbish. So find them, find the property owner. Or if you have a problem with a tenant and they're causing a noise or whatever, call the police. We must have laws that pertain to this stuff, they're just not being enforced. I just don't get why this thing all of a sudden came up about short-term rentals. I mean, the majority of, I know a lot of people down there that rent just to pay their taxes. They've been living there for years. It's not the new people that are coming in and paying millions for a property sight unseen. They're not gonna rent probably anyway, but I think this short-term rental thing is being blown all over the port, and the fees, $500. I mean, give me a break. I can see maybe $100 or maybe $200, but I think the big thing that started this maybe was a few years ago, the 6 people that were killed in Portland in that apartment house fire, the exit for a block and everything. I can see life safety things like fire extinguishers and egress windows and fire escapes and anything that pertains to life safety. I think it should be checked out, and there should be a cost for that. But to charge somebody $500 a year to rent, and then if they go to sell their place, the new people can't rent, it's ridiculous.
Yes, all the way in the back.
I'm Jimmy Stockman. I live over on Woodlawn Avenue. I'd like to call the question on the amendment, please.
Second.
We've had a motion to find out how you feel about that proposed amendment. We've had tons of discussions. It's time to vote. And that vote is specifically just the amendment. Once we decide yes or no, then we have to look again at the article.
You gotta move in to what you want to do first. That's right. Just ask for call the question. You take a vote on that, if I understand. And if that passes, that's the question you call. If it doesn't pass,
Yes, we take a vote on the amendment first.
No, we take a vote on Jimmy's motion.
Oh, you take a vote on, all right. Okay. So you heard the question. We're going to vote on what Jim suggested. All those in favor? All those opposed? Jim's request carries. Now we vote on the amendment, not the amended article, but the amendment itself. So the amendment is to reduce the amount requested from $2,078,769 to $1,909,769. All those in favor? All those opposed? The opposed have it. The amendment failed. So now we're going to vote on Article 5. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? No. Is there any other discussion on Article 5 with the amendment not approved? All those in favor of approving amendment number 5, which would be bring the total amount requested by Article 5, which would be the total amount to $2,078,769. All those in favor of that? All those opposed? The article carries in the amount of $2,078,769. This is interesting stuff. I got it. The motion was the way George asked it to be moved. But things are different now out here in real life. Article 6, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for public safety program expenses. The amount requested is $3,030,630. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator. Yes, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $3,030,630 for public safety program expenses.
Second. We have a motion and a second that the town raise and appropriate $3,030,630 for public safety program expenses. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Article carries in the amount of $3,030,630. Article 7, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate the health and welfare program expenses. The amount requested is $821,911. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $821,911 for health and welfare program expenses.
Is there a second? I heard a second there. We have a motion and a second that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $821,911 for health and welfare program expenses. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Those approved? Those favored? Yes. Those opposed? Article 7 carries in the amount of $821,911. Article 8, to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate for public work program expenses. The amount requested is $1,266,817. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,266,817 for public works program expenses. Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $1,266,817 for public works programs expenses. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor? Those opposed? Article 8 carries in the amount of $1,266,817. Article 9. See what sum the town will raise and appropriate for recreation, culture, contingency, and miscellaneous program expenses. The amount requested is $704,190. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $704,190 for recreation, culture, contingency, and miscellaneous program expenses.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $704,190 for recreation, culture, contingency, and miscellaneous program expenses. Is there any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
It's only because it has miscellaneous in it. I just want to use this forum to ask a question to the Board of Selectmen. The same survey that people have cited was important for short-term rentals. The number one important issue for the town, 70% of respondents said that the environment was the most important thing happening, that they were concerned about what was happening. Quality of our water is a consistent problem with swimming, with clamming.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Gray's Library for Friday morning story time. I'm Miss Bryce, and I'm going to be sharing a story with you today, along with Big Bear and Redbird. They're here with me in the children's room. I hope you all are doing well, and you're getting ready for an exciting holiday we like to call Valentine's Day, a day that's all about celebrating the people that we love and care for. And so, I have a special book that I want to read with you today about Valentine's Day. But first, we're going to sing our song that we always sing at the beginning of story time, a song about coming together. I start by clapping my hands and patting my knees to get a rhythm. If you know the words and you want to join along with me, you're more than welcome to. And if you want to just listen along, that's okay too. Are you ready? Here we go. Here we are together to
I'm thinking like.
The town has several initiatives and programs that we perform. Healthy beaches, part of keeping the water. By the way, the clams, that's not water quality. That's green crabs eating all your clams. We had a meeting the other night with a global or climate change initiative group that's starting here in town, and we are working towards this. This is the town meeting, and everything seems to be up for discussion today. But I would ask you to come to a board of selectmen meeting and discuss this, and perhaps bring some things that you would like to see, because it's very important. For those of you who don't know, I'm a commercial lobsterman, so the environment is my life, and if we don't take care of it, it will affect all of us. But it certainly has a large effect on me and many of the residents of this town who, in one way or the other, are involved in the commercial fishery, whether directly or indirectly. So, this is not something that we take lightly. In fact, it may seem cliche, but we just got 2 EVs, one for a code and one for the town nurse. I hope you see them around town. They have very nice electric graphics on them. And well, that isn't going to solve the problem. And all of us in this room aren't going to solve the problem. But if we don't do something, we never will get to the end. And that means that each and every one of us, as individuals and as members of this community, have to step up and do their part. I know that's not, the question you asked wasn't specific, but I hope that gives you some insight into the thinking of this board.
Is there any other discussion? Yes, sir. Would you stand up, please, sir, so we can hear you? Introduce yourself.
When we reach 70% vaccination as a state is when we will go from Zoom to live. And believe me, I'm looking forward to live meetings, but we have public safety. The governor made a declaration that state of emergency will end at the end of the month, and that may in some way, I can't speak for that right now, but that may affect our decision going forward. But I'm with you. I'd like to see people live. It's nice to see people without their masks on. It's nice to see people's faces.
Is there any discussion, further discussion about the issue, which is Article 9? All those in favor? All those opposed? Article 9 carries in the amount of $704,190. Article 10. See what sum the town will raise and appropriate for capital expense and reserve account and debt service payments. The amount requested is $2,471,858. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,471,858 for capital expense and reserve account and debt service payments.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the town to raise and appropriate $2,471,858 for capital expense and reserve account and debt service payments. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
I just had a question. I'm sure it was answered this winter, but I didn't watch. There's a huge increase in the road improvements by 182,000. I was just wondering what was that for?
Town manager or the senior selectman?
Mainly all road improvement, not correct?
Let me just pull up the list.
We have a master list of all the roads also. We're already looking it up right now in the budget. But I don't believe there was anything, it's the roads, you know what happens here in Maine, what happens to them.
Yeah, but it went from 230,000 to 414. So that's a big increase in 1 year.
So the road improvements last year during the pandemic were reduced in order to keep the tax rate flat. And so that's one reason we're seeing the increase. And some of those projects were leftover projects. And Mike Claus is also in the back if people want any more detail. The amount this year includes paving for School Street, Ocean Avenue from Kings Highway or the old Kings Highway to Chicks Creek, Wiles District Road drainage and maintenance paving, Broadway, Edgewood and Durant's, Elm Street, Fisher's Lane, Main Street from Elm Street to Green Street, Oak Ridge Road, South Main Street, Union Street, Walker's Lane, Wiles District Road from Turbot's Creek to Main Street, and Ocean Avenue sidewalk from Seagrass to Green Street, and Ocean Avenue seawall. So there is a large group of those. Some of those roads were taken off last year's list in order to keep the funding level down.
Is there any other discussion? If not, those in favor? Those opposed? Article 10 carries in the amount of $2,471,858. Article 11. Great time for the voice break. Yes, regrettably, it is water. Article 11, do you favor authorizing the Board of Selectmen to issue general obligation bonds or notes in the name of the town of Kennebunkport in a principal amount not to exceed $1 million for a term of approximately 5 years, which bonds or notes may be callable, and to use the proceeds of said bonds or notes to pay for the costs of public safety radio communications improvements and upgrades, including installing 2 new transmit and receive towers, all new radio equipment needed for the new towers, and the existing tower at the police department, replacing all mobile and portable radios, and a new console in dispatch. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 11 as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Article 11 as written, which includes that not to exceed $1 million loan. All those in favor? All those opposed? Article 11 carries in the amount of a loan not to exceed $1 million. Article 12. Do you favor authorizing the Board of Selectmen to issue general obligation bonds or notes in the name of the town of Kennebunkport in a principal amount not to exceed $6 million for a term of approximately 20 years, which bonds or notes may be callable, and to use the proceeds of said bonds or notes to pay for costs of wastewater capital projects, including the replacement of 3 pump stations, the rehabilitation of clarifiers, replacement of belt filters, and the installation of dewatering equipment. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 12 as written.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Oops. Don't vote yet. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Article 12 carries in the amount of loan not to exceed $6 million. Article 13. It's a good one. It comes to read. To see if the town will vote to authorize the transfer of a 1989 KME Avenger 75-foot ladder truck, VIN, vehicle identification number, 1 Kilo 9 Alpha Foxtrot 4284 Kilo November 058168, commonly known as Kennebunkport Ladder 4, from the town of Kennebunkport Fire Department to the Atlantic Volunteer Engine Company, with the condition that if the Atlantic Volunteer Engine Company sells said ladder 4, all proceeds of the sale will be used towards the purchase of firefighting or rescue equipment approved by the fire chief and to be owned by the town. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 13 is written.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Well, so Article 13 carries as written. Article 14. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $2,892,120 from estimated non-property tax revenues to reduce the property tax commitment, together with all categories of funds which may be available from the federal government, and also to use $225,000 from undesignated fund balance and $325,000 from capital projects reserve account to reduce the property tax commitment. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 14 as written.
There is a second. We have a motion and a second to approve the town appropriating the sum of $2,890,000. You propose it be as written. I do, as written. The sum of that loan to appropriate $2,892,120. Right?
Yeah.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Article 14 carries as written. That completes our article.
I just, as town manager, want to thank everybody for coming out, and I really want to thank George Emery for taking on the task of moderator. I mean, as you know, we lost Wayne Adams last year, and we were looking for a moderator, and George was very kind to willing to step forward, and he has studied it, and it was a challenging meeting, and I think he did a tremendous job to try and keep everybody.
Just like your friendly shore patrol. Let me turn the floor over, please, to Selectman Alan Day. Good morning. Would you use that?
Spirit of America Award, Kennebunkport Annual Town Meeting. To Claire Julian. Is it Claire Julian here? Claire.
I know why Tracy really wanted me to work today.
The essence of volunteering is giving part of oneself. Claire Julian certainly describes that definition. Whether she is at a town meeting, Lewis T. Graves Memorial Library, the Seacoast Garden Club, or working tirelessly behind the scenes of our local holiday charity. Claire always arrives with lots of energy and valuable ideas. Claire has volunteered for over 20 years in various capacities at Lewis T. Graves Memorial Library in Kennebunkport. She is a past member and currently serves on long-range planning committees. She is also a point person of the Garden Club to care for the library's gardens during all 4 seasons. Her passion for books in the library was passed on to her son, Sam, at an early age. He would purchase children's books at Christmas time, wrap them up, and give them to the library. This is just one of the many examples of Claire encouraging others to give of themselves. As election warden, Claire has the tremendously responsibility of keeping order of our elections. It is not a task that many people would enjoy. However, Claire takes it all in stride. Her calm demeanor and legal background guide her through the ever-changing election laws and requirements. She tirelessly gave many hours of her time while working with the town staff over the past year to ensure the integrity of our elections during the pandemic. All that Claire does for our community is done quietly without seeking praise, acknowledgement, or acknowledgement. That is part of what makes her such a perfect recipient of the Spirit of America Award. She truly gives part of herself to others without any expectation of recognition. The Kennebunkport Selectmen would like to recognize Claire Julian with the 2021 Spirit of America Award, signed this 12th day of June 2021 by the Kennebunkport Board of Selectmen, Edward Hutchins, Michael Weston, Sheila Matthews Bull, Patrick Briggs, and Alan Daggett. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I like the part about quiet and behind the scenes. So, but this is an unbelievable surprise, and I'm really thrilled, and I love this town, and
We love you back.
thank you. Thanks very much. What a great surprise.
I'm going to turn this back over to Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Seeing there is no more business to come before the town, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Aha, we are adjourned. Thank you.